we had a very close friend who, man, he went really heavy into hallucinogenic drugs. He tried to find answers in, religion, being of himself, just all the above. And he was even a bit of a pseudo alchemist where
So I have the wonderful Jonny Davy with me of Job for a Cowboy. It's been a long time in the making to chat to you, man. But how are you?
I am doing great. I'm just excited to speak with you today, Trishan, in this vast expanse of existence where shadows dance at the edge of the abyss emerges a figure of mythical proportions, which is yourself, which I'm stoked to speak with you today.
That's probably the best introduction I think I've ever had, like in anything. But I have to say, it feels so good to say that you guys are back.
Yes, it feels good too, man. It's been quite the long time. 10 damn years. It's crazy how fast time flies.
Yeah, man, I can imagine. What was kind of you know, when it all sort of started to kind of germinate, what was that moment when you guys decided, right, okay, it's time to come back now?
Well, when we released Sun Eater, it was a bit of a bittersweet. We got a surprisingly generally positive reaction, and we just immediately fell off the face of the earth just due to real life hitting us in the face. But we made the decision to never announce an official breakup. We decided to say, hey, let's just leave the door cracked open because I think we're all going to get the itch at some point to do this again. And it took a bit longer than I would have assumed, and it's probably some of the other guys would have assumed as well. But I think the catalyst was we put out a side project called Serpents of Gnosis with the two guitar players of the band, and that was a bit of a death grind album put out on Metal Blade. I don't know, a few years back, and it always felt a bit daunting and I don't want to, scary is not the right word, but just it would require so much effort to create a new Job for a Cowboy record. We didn't want to just put something out for the sake of it. We wanted to actually go all in and put maximum amount of effort into it. But once we did the Serpentinosis album, um, we realized, hey, this is actually doable.
But were you guys kind of nervous? I mean, I know you mentioned not that you were sort of like intimidated or anything, but it must have been like, 10 years away. It's a long time, man.
I wouldn't say we were nervous. It was just the amount of work. Our lives were so busy, and just we knew the amount of work it would take, and we just couldn't grasp kind of juggling real life and getting that project completed. But again, once we did Serpentinosis, we kind of had a feeling out for it and discovered this was actually doable.
So obviously you kind of came back with the fantastic pairing of Job for Cowboy and Jason Suecof. But I was just wondering, like, what do you think it is that is this sort of magic chemistry that you guys have had? Because I think you've been working with him since Gloom, is that right? Like the EP?
We started with Ruination, and then it was Gloom, I think. Yes.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So it was even before that, but we were always a big fan of Jason's work. Um, he worked with the Black Dahlia Murder. That's the first one that always comes to mind. A bunch of stuff that escapes me. I mean, he's all over the place. You look at his discography; it's like a monolith of work that he's done. And what really made us uh, attach ourselves to him was one, we're a fan of his previous bands in the past, Crotch Duster and Capharnum. And I feel like Job for Cowboy, especially even now compared to before, um, our work is very intricate and technical, and he is such a good musician at guitar and vocals that he can pull it all off. So when we go in the studio, we look at him as almost like a six member. Like we take in all of his input. We want all the feedback we can get from him. And not only that, just due to the fact that we've worked together so much and we click so well, we're just not afraid to bluntly tell each other how we feel. If we don't like something, we're going to tell each other. And I think with with me being the founding member, there's this maybe some people have a perception that it's my way or the highway, but it's very much a democracy. Like we all have to give the thumbs up on every piece of music, otherwise it's thrown in the trash, and that even goes with Jason. So I guess that kind of sums up as to why we find ourselves always leaning back on Jason because he's just the man.
Absolutely, man. So when it comes to actually, like writing the material, because it was over a certain amount of time, like did you kind of was it sort of like slow tinkering and then you kind of would change something, or did you ever kind of like write something that was really sick like a couple of years ago and then you're thinking like, it's not quite as good as we thought, or like,
That's the problem with having so much time. It's all of the above. Some
yeah.
songs are a slow, arduous process, and some songs, one year we get through so much of it, and uh, a year or two or past, we have this song in the bucket, and we're like, okay, let's go back and pick away at this. This album has been an evolution from the very start. It's been just changing over and over and over again. And we finally got to a point where all happy with it.
How do you know that point? Is it just kind of like an intrinsic sort of like you just feel that it's right and that it's done?
Yeah. Yeah. I wish I had a better way to pinpoint it and elaborate on that, but it's just on feel. It's just, we listened, it was like, all right, I think it's, I think it's cooked. I think we baked this cake and let's put the icing on it and let's put it out.
It's awesome though, man. Like, I think especially the first time I listened to it, I was kind of I thought it was gonna be like a bit faster. And I really like the fact that it's a little bit slower, it's a bit more groovy in certain places, and I feel like it's quite a dark record as well.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, we put a lot of thought in just trying to create a feel of general how we want the listener to feel, and we just wanted to create a kind of almost sad and eerie feel behind it. And I'd like to think we somewhat accomplished that.
Absolutely, man. You like 100% nailed it. I felt like I was in whatever the artwork is on the cover, like whatever the fuck is going on there, man.
Yeah, I mean, everything kind of blossomed from the. I mean, we had a base of it. I mean, it's a part two of Sun Eater, so we knew we wanted to piggyback on that because it felt like we had unfinished business after putting out and not really doing anything. But there was also still so much conceptually to pick at. So uh, we just used that, and after having 10 years to reflect, we could focus more on our strengths and weaknesses from that album and try to build upon that with a new one. We're just always trying to challenge ourselves and improve. I think that's why the band continues to sound different with every release to some regard.
Absolutely. I was going to ask how Sun Eater and Moon Healer kind of complement each other.
Well, again, it all goes back to the theme in and of itself. I'll just give you the brief synopsis. I always try to avoid, I've said this in other interviews, try to avoid saying too much because it's about a particular individual. And as you might know, the metal scene is very small.
Yeah.
So I don't want immediately everyone to say, oh, okay, I know what this is about, or who this is about in particularly. But we had a very close friend who, man, he went really heavy into hallucinogenic drugs. He tried to find answers in, religion, just the being of himself, just all the above. And he was even a bit of a pseudo alchemist where he would brew his own drugs from home, so he'd become a bit of his own guinea pig,
Okay.
and it would just abuse and abuse. It was just consistent, and I think that escalated some inner maybe I think he had some internal bipolar disorders and some schizophrenia, and due to the consumption of the drug use, just kind of let it all out dramatically. So with Sun Eater, that was a bit more of a outside perspective, and the lyrics conceptually talk about how it affected his life. And with Moon Healer, it's a closer dive into their beliefs. So it's more of a first person. I kind of try to put myself in their shoes. I studied all the things they were into. I dove heavily. It opened up a giant wormhole diving into Terrence McKenna with his exploration of human consciousness, the drug, particularly dimethyltryptamine and its psychological effects, the religion of Gnosticism, dove into open up ideas of storage in the Holy Bible, with Moses in the burning bush, and how that could there are theories of maybe that had links to dimethyltryptamine. Rick Strassman's research in the early 1990s, you look at LSD and Timothy Leary, the psychology of Carl Jung. I mean, it just kind of opened the floodgates to a lot of ideas that I wasn't. I mean, I was privy to, but I didn't. I wasn't as well versed as I was before. And it's interesting now in hindsight. I'd have a much better understanding of this person, but it's unfortunately, I think they took it a little bit too far, and
Mm,
that's just what it came down to.
okay,
So there's your link. There's your link between the two.
it's a very sort of like a difficult subject, I think, to kind of really get your head around,
It
like
it is. It's also very scatterbrained, but that's just the reality of what it was. This person was all over the place. So the album, the music, and the lyrics kind of reflect that too. I mean, there's a lot of left turns on the record.
what I think it's amazing, like you've basically described the indescribable, like, what how how was it
Tried.
that you but like how did you try and because I feel like it's so vivid, like I feel like you're in the sort of like the membranes of whatever this sort of like world is like. How did you do it?
I looked at I mean, in Moon Healer, you can be almost looked at as a bad trip experience, as I guess you could say. You could almost look at, you can even see that in her videos. Obviously, the protagonist um, continuously tends to um, ingest and abuse drugs, and they keep finding themselves in these different alternate spiritual realities, and what that can do to the person, and what they're seeing, and at the same time how that reflects back in the real world. So it's almost like this person's living in two different existences.
I've been watching like documentaries on LSD and psilocybin and things like that, and there is this sort of an argument to say, I think, that there is this higher consciousness, and like do you personally believe in a higher consciousness yourself, not necessarily through drugs, but just in general?
um you know as I was younger, I consider myself a very militant atheist, and as I got older and maybe did some experimentation in my younger years, I think it's almost naive to call yourself an atheist, just because I think it's naive to believe that you understand everything in existence. So I guess that would be my personal take as to where I stand today. I guess I look at myself as a bit of a agnostic, and just I understand that I don't really understand anything, and I definitely would love to understand more. And I think as I get older, I'm going to continue to um, try to understand that aspect of life. But um, you know, the reality is I don't think I ever will.
So I'm sure everyone's probably going to be wondering, is there going to be any live appearances at all?
So there's tons of ongoing discussions on making that happen. We're all over the place in our personal lives. Tony, our lead guitar player, he got his medical degree, his doctorate's in Ireland. He does a lot of medical research down over there.
No way.
I went back to college and worked on my degree on computer programming. I do a lot of automation, software design now, stuff like that. And on top of that, I'm a father now. I'm a father of two. So the reality is, I think this is more or less it's more than this. It's a passion project. But I think it's more than that. We built upon this for so long, and we enjoy it so much. But just things are just getting in the way. We have other priorities where we can't be that full-time touring band that we were 10 years ago. But I think it's safe to say be on the lookout in the near future, because I think some things some shows and things will start popping up in the near future.
Yeah, it's just I'm just really glad that you guys are back at it, and we've got a new Job for a Cowboy album 10 years later.
Yeah, man, we are pumped. Almost felt like it wasn't going to happen a couple times, but super relieved and happy that it did.
What would you say is probably the biggest thing that you've learned, over this 10-year period between Sun Eater and Moon Healer about yourself during that process? It's a big
Uh,
question.
yeah, man. God, it's like a therapy question. It's
Sorry
just
if I
life.
took it completely
No,
sidelined.
you're fine. Life changes. Yeah, fatherhood has changed me dramatically. My profession has changed me dramatically. I mean, I feel like I'm more. I mean, I hate to go to the most obvious, but it's just maturity.
Mhm.
You know, realizing that in life, I've realized things don't really get done unless you do it yourself, and this that even tied in quite a bit with this record. Um, just so many things have happened relying on other people, and it's just you just have to rely on yourself. And I found myself in that same situation over and over. So I think that would be the biggest thing.
Yeah, thank you ever so much for appearing on the show. I really appreciate the time that you've taken to have a chat.
Of course, Trishan, it is. I feel like I've already known you for a bit because I've watched your videos on the sidelines, hearing you talk about albums and music. So it feels like touching up with a friend. Really nice speaking with you.
Yeah, 100%, man.